A shadow passed over Florinda Valdez's face. When her hair turned white. The hunter turned to look at the patient again. From what he could see, her almost shaven hair was unmistakably black. To reverse the symptoms, all we had to do was take the old lady out of the room. The hunter looked closely at the girl, trying to sense whether there was still anything human hidden deep in her inexpressive eyes. The chameleon syndrome. For a long time, Angelina had been forced to be what the men who violated her wanted her to be. An object of pleasure, nothing else. So she had adapted. The result was that she had lost her own self. One little piece at a time it had been taken away from her. Many years of abuse had wiped out all traces of identity, so she borrowed one from the people around her. "We're not dealing with a case of multiple personality," Florinda Valdez said, "or the kind of patient who claims to be Napoleon or the Queen of England. Subjects affected by chameleon syndrome tend to imitate perfectly whoever they meet. Faced with a doctor, they become doctors. Faced with a cook, they say they know how to cook. Questioned on their profession, they respond in a general but appropriate manner." The hunter remembered reading about a patient who identified with a cardiologist he was talking to, and when the doctor asked him a trick question on the diagnosis of a particular cardiac anomaly, answered that he couldn't give an opinion without careful clinical examination. But Angelina doesn't simply emulate other people. When she was in contact with the old woman, she actually began to age. Her mind was causing her body to change. A transformist, the hunter told himself. Have there been other manifestations? Some, but insignificant ones, lasting barely a few minutes. Subjects affected by the syndrome are the way they are because they've undergone brain damage or, as in the case of Angelina, some kind of shock that produces the same effects. The hunter was both disturbed and fascinated by the girl's abilities. This was the proof he needed to demonstrate to himself that he had not been laboring under a delusion all this time. The theories he had formulated about his prey had been confirmed. The hunter knew that all serial killers suffer from a crisis of identity. When they kill, they are reflected in the victim and recognize themselves. They don't need to pretend anymore. While the murder is happening, the monster deep inside them appears on their faces. But the man he was hunting, his prey, was much more than that. He had no true identity, which was why he had constantly to borrow one from somebody else. He was a unique example, an extremely rare psychiatric case, a transformist serial killer. He didn't just take another person's place and imitate his behavior, he actually became that person. That was why nobody, apart from the hunter, had ever identified him. It was impossible to predict his moves. The transformist had exceptional learning skills, especially as regards languages and accents. Over the years, he had perfected his method. First of all, he chose an appropriate individual, a man similar to himself, nondescript features, the same height, easily reproducible distinguishing marks, as in the case of Jean Dues in Paris. The most important thing was that he had no past, no ties, and a monotonous daily routine, and preferably worked from home. The transformist took over his life. The modus operandi was always the same. He would kill the person and wipe out his face, as if wanting to remove his identity forever, then assume that identity for himself. Angelina wasn't merely a confirmation. She was a second example. Looking at her, the hunter realized that he hadn't been deceiving himself all this time. But he still needed a demonstration, because the most difficult challenge was in trying to imagine such a talent combined with an instinct to kill. Florinda Valdez's mobile phone started to vibrate. She excused herself and went out to answer the call. This was the opportunity the hunter had been waiting for. He had done some research before coming here. Angelina had a younger brother. They had lived together for a very short time, given that she had been sold at the age of 5. But perhaps that had been sufficient for some trace of him to remain in her. For the hunter, it was the key he needed to enter the prison of her mind. Alone now with the girl, he went and placed himself in front of her, kneeling in such a way that she could see his face properly. Then he started to speak slowly. "Angelina, I want you to listen to me. I've taken your brother, little Pedro. Do you remember? He's a lovely boy, but now I'm going to kill him." The girl did not react. "Did you